Welcome back to the boys. The boy in the iceberg. The podcast where I watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. As always, I'm Caleb Bader. Oh yeah, Harley's not here. Okay, yeah. So in case you hadn't realized, we usually joke about how one of us is going to leave the podcast and just abandon the other person and leave them for good. Usually it's jokes. Today it was not. Harley's gone, guys. You know, it's a little sad actually. He moved to West Virginia. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to do the podcast by myself. Um, I don't even miss him. You know what? You know he can do whatever he wants. It's not up to me to decide, but we're gonna have to power on. So now it's just gonna be the boy in the iceberg. It's not even a clever title now. It's just the name of an episode. But we will power through. But in all seriousness, Harley's just gone for the week, so don't freak out. So this is gonna be sort of a bridge version of the boys in the iceberg, which I'm dubbing the boy in the iceberg, and it's just gonna be me. So it's probably going to be fairly humorless and straight to the point. But it will give me some much needed time to make fun of Harley, not to his face. So if I feel like Harley would have said something, I'm going to do my best impression, which is say something about Star Wars and then yell into the mic. Okay? So every once in a while, I'll be jumping in with Harley's thoughts. But let's get straight into the first episode, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, one of Harley's favorites, the Southern Raiders. And I really like this episode just because of its emotional drive. It's actually got some real feel to it and some heart. And this is a Katara and Zuko. I guess I would say centric. It's more focused on Katara, but it's actually in the line of them taking little trips with Zuko. So we've already got a couple of episodes previous to this one. I think the first one was Aang going off to sort of help Zuko find his fire. So they had like a little field trip together, and then we got Sokka, who enlisted Zuko's help to save his father from the boiling rock. And so now it's Katara's turn, and this episode starts off with the gang getting attacked at the Western Air Temple, and everything's sort of everything's in disarray, and nobody knows what's really going on. And so Hakoda they've got them back, and then Suki, and so everyone's there, but then all of a sudden they start getting hit with fire and stuff like that, and they're just destroying the temple. So Toph tries to like tunnel through to get everybody out that way. But Appa will not go. Appa has already had some pretty bad experience with tunnels, and he just won't go through the tunnel. So Aang is determined to take Appa away and fly through the air. But that means that the group is going to have to split up. And they just got their father back, so Sokka and Katara are not too keen on that idea. I think Katara says that the Fire Nation won't split up their family again, which is just a little bit of foreshadowing for the episode and how it's going to go. But I think it's Aang, Suki, Katara, Sokka, and Toph get on Appa and fly off, leaving the others to get out of the tunnel. And they tell Zuko, they're like, "Hey, come on, Zuko!" But he stands there and he says that he's got to stay and fight because this is a family affair, or something to that effect, because he knows that it's his sister. So he's going to stay and fight while the others escape. And it's a really cool moment for Zuko because Azula comes down, and they've got like a couple big warships there. And Azula says that she's going to kill Zuko, in effect. She is here to celebrate the death of her becoming an only child. So she's here to kill Zuko, is basically what it boils down to. And Zuko doesn't want to die, I don't think. So they take off a fighting, and they're up on top of an airship, and we get like I would say a meme of the series, if you'll follow me there, where two people are fighting on top of something, and they each hit each other with separate forces that knock them backwards and fly off the side. I think we've had that a couple times. But Zuko and Azula are falling now, and they're just like, it doesn't look like there's any hope for them. But Appa comes out of the sky and grabs Zuko, and he looks back over at Azula and says, she's not going to make it, is she? But then, of course, Azula does some weird firebending that shoots her over to the side of a cliff where she survives. So that basically just sets up the beginning of the episode. I remember watching this. I never liked how they did it because it just sort of felt out of the blue. Like they weren't really, there wasn't really any depth to it. It's just, oh, Azuka shows up and now we have to move. So I wish they would have taken a little bit more time. But we are 6 episodes away from the end of the series, so I can sort of understand that. Harley, what did you think about the beginning of this episode? Well, I thought it was kind of like episode 2 where Anakin like jumps off of that yellow speeder that Obi-Wan's driving, and Obi-Wan says, I hate it when he does. Please save it for your Star Wars podcast, Harley. Okay, so yeah, that just sets up the beginning of the episode, and now we get into the heart of what the episode is going to be when everyone's sitting around a campfire, and it seems like most of the gang has come around to the idea that they like Zuko, that he actually stood up for them, and so he's cemented his place in the gang. Everyone, that is, except for Katara, who still does not trust Zuko. So while everybody's having a pretty good time, Katara just gets mad and leaves, and Zuko goes off after her. He wants to find out what's wrong because he doesn't know. He has an idea because he did basically betray Katara in Ba Sing Se, but he's thinks that he's proven himself so far to be at least a little trustworthy. But Katara's not having any of it, so he goes off and he talks to her, and she gives him a little insight about how she still hates the Fire Nation basically for killing her mother, and she hasn't been able to let that go, even in the light of what Zuko has done for the group. And I think that's a really big thing. So later on, Zuko goes to talk to Sokka, who's waiting on Suki at this point. He's got a little a love nest set up, if you will, and Zuko interrupts that, and he kind of asks Sokka about their mother and how she died, just trying to get a little bit of perspective on Katara. And Sokka informs him that the ships that attacked them when they were younger, the ones that killed their mother, have like a I don't even remember what it was, some sort of seabird. And so Zuko knows now the exact fleet or the group that attacked them that day. And we get to see like a sort of it's a flashback where they attacked, and they're wearing like these weird uniforms. Like I don't even know what it was. Harley, did that remind you of anything? Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like the stealth troopers, Star Wars, you know. That's just, they're more like an elite force that they've got like this sleek armor, and save it for your Star Wars podcast, Harley. So yeah, they attack, and at this point we only see Sokka's perspective, where the troopers come, and he says that as soon as they came there, basically they were gone. And so it looks like to everyone that they fought back the Fire Nation army, and even Sokka participated a little bit. He threw a little boomerang at him, but everyone thought basically that they basically won. But then Katara comes running out sobbing, and we learn that they have killed her mother. And Hakoda yells out her name. Can't even remember her name at this point, but runs over, and she has been killed. And so now that Zuko has this information about who exactly it was that killed her mother, he goes back to Katara, and they talk about it. And they sort of hatch this plan together. They're going to go track down the Southern Raiders, who were the group that came to fight the Water Tribe that day. And they go over, and they're talking to Aang, and Katara's like, I need Appa. So give him to me because we're gonna go kill this guy, basically. And Aang all of a sudden is the wisest person there, because he goes off onto this tirade how she's not actually looking for justice. She's looking for revenge. And revenge is like a two-headed rat snake, where I don't even remember the metaphor he used, but basically it's not good for anybody. She needs to seek forgiveness. And Zuko takes her side on this. He's like, forgiveness isn't going to help her mother come back to life. She needs to take revenge and get justification for this, even though it's not really justice. But Aang's like, okay, just think about it, and we'll talk more about it later. So we cut to night time, where Katara and Zuko have decided to just take Appa anyway, and they were gonna do it without even really consulting Aang again. But Aang sort of knows this, so he's waiting on him, and he gets a little angry at Katara. It's like, you were just gonna take Appa without even asking me? And she's like, yeah, I was. And he's like, okay, you need to do this, but just please go find him, confront him, but then forgive him. And at this point, Katara's like, there's absolutely no way I'm going to do that. This man killed my mother. Any thoughts, Harley? Star Wars. So Katara and Zuko, they take off and they go to what looks to be like a Fire Nation, I don't know, like a stronghold or something, because they need to get like the manifest and the ship logs for all the different like fleets, and to see where they are and where they're supposed to be stationed and stuff. So they break in here, and Katara's got like a stealth mask on, and like Zuko's got his hood pulled over. So they look really sneaky at this point, and they make their way into the log room or whatever, and they find out where they're gonna be. And I think it's like Whale Tail Island or something is where the Southern Raiders are going to be stationed. So they head off to Whale Tail Island. And Katara's got bloodlust in her right now. She just wants to straight up kill this guy. For all like her talk of, and her like, for as much as she's like a motherly figure at this point, she is just entirely enveloped by rage. So they head off and they find the fleet. And she's doing some pretty impressive waterbending. Like at one point, she puts like a bubble of water around Appa and takes him down underneath the ocean, and then just brings this massive wave up that takes everybody and knocks them off of the ship. And so basically, all the crew's been knocked into the water, and she hits this guy straight in the chest with a water bolt or whatever, and it looks pretty painful. And at this point, she's got like those octopus arms that she carries around. And they head into the captain's room, or like I don't even know, the main room on the ship, to go and confront the captain. And she bloodbends. Like I don't even know if it's the full moon. I think she's just so mad that it like contributes to her bending, like fire bending. And she takes this guy and basically crumples him up and throws him down on the ground. And Zuko at this point is like, whoa, what's going on? Because I don't think he's ever heard about this before. And so he's like, for a second, he looks almost scared, but then he gets back, and he's like, tell me, do you remember who Katara's like, do you remember who I am? And he's like, no. And it turns out they've got the wrong guy. Katara just came in here and just crumpled him up, and it's not even the right guy. They're looking for another man. I forget his name, but he's been retired for 4 years, basically. So I think they just leave that guy, and they take off to go find this other guy. So we cut to this man. He's been retired from the Navy or whatever, and he's living with his mother, who's just going after him, and just like nothing he does is good enough. I'm assuming like she's just, everything he does, he can never live up to her expectation, and he always does something wrong. Because she's just yelling at him about, he's trying to just garden. He's trying to just live a peaceful life. And so she sends him into the market. And while he's like buying food and stuff, he keeps thinking that he sees someone following him. And he's acting like real paranoid and stuff. And on the path home, Katara and Zuko, they show up. And immediately Katara you can just tell that she's just so enraged again. it sort of acts like a firebender. That's what it makes me think of. She's trying to use her rage to forward her bending, which is pretty cool. We don't really get to see all that much except for like the Avatar state, which I think is a good parallel because he gets so much more powerful when he gets mad, and that's really when we've seen the Avatar state come upon. But we find out from Katara at this point that what actually happened was she ran into her house when everything started going back when they attacked and her mom was killed. She ran into her house, and there was already a guy in there with her mom, and it was the captain, and he's like, "Okay, tell me where the other waterbender is, and I'll let your daughter live," basically. Or I think, yeah, Kaya at that point was like, "Let my daughter go, and I'll tell you what you want." And so what he was searching for was information about a waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe. He said he had a source, too, and I want to know what the source is, because apparently there's a spy in the Southern Water Tribe. And I don't even know if Katara's abilities had manifested at that point, so I don't know how they would have known that. But regardless, Kaya says, to save Katara, basically, Kaya says, "I'm the waterbender." And so she's like, "Just take me prisoner." But the captain is like, "Well, actually, I'm not taking prisoners right now." So then he just straight up murders her. Any thoughts on that, Harley? Yeah, it's kind of like when Anakin kills Count Dooku. At this point, Katara's like, "Do you recognize me?" And he finally does. He's like, "Yeah, you're that little water tribe girl. I killed your mother." And Katara's like, "Well, she wasn't the last airbender." And then he does this really dumb, like, "Well, who was it?" Just so he can get this good reveal that it was actually Katara. And she's like, "It was me." And she does a really cool thing where she stops all the rain, basically, and then creates like a bubble around them. And the rain's just sitting there floating in air. And she's telling them how she hates him and everything. And she sends these ice spikes down and to ostensibly kill him. So she's raining all these ice spikes down while they're still in their bubble. And Zuko's pretty impressed by this because this is some crazy bending. And she stops the ice spikes right before they hit him. And she's like, "As much as I hate you, I can't bring myself to do it." And so she doesn't end up killing him. She doesn't really, I don't think, forgive him, but she can't bring herself to kill him. And there's another sort of like a misstep. I don't even know what exactly it is, but some of the ice spikes that were stuck in the ground stay stuck in the ground, and the other ones turn back to water. So I'm still not sure, and if you guys know anything, feel free to write in. But still not sure whether they have to consciously hold them as ice, or they just they stay as ice, or they have to automatically turn back to water or whatever. I'm still not sure on that. But at this point, Katara and Zuko head back, and they're talking to Aang, and Aang says he's really proud that Katara was able to forgive him. And Katara says, I haven't forgiven him. I just couldn't kill him. And but I do forgive you, Zuko. And so I think that at this point, the gang is one big happy family again. And it's really cool now that they've just sort of all let Zuko in, because it just shows like how much depth there is within the team themselves. Because you got people from all these different walks of life that have come together for this cause, and for many different reasons. So yeah, this is actually one of my favorite episodes that I always forget about. I always forget exactly how good it is, but I really do enjoy this episode. Harley here. I actually like episode 3 the best. That's one of my favorite episodes. We're not talking about Star Wars episodes, Harley. So I think that just about wraps this episode up. If I'm forgetting about anything, let's get into just a little bit of trivia. So first off, we again, this is all like this entire block of episodes we watched, starting with the Western Air Temple, are part of the countdown to the Comet event. I wish they'd stop putting that in trivia. We know already. The dark coat that Katara wears while sneaking into the Southern Raiders base is an item in the game Legends of the Arena, and is named Long Coat. So I am not familiar with Legends of the Arena, but I guess the creators of the show are. I think that's a pretty cool Easter egg for anyone who's a fan of Legends of the Arena. It sounds like RPG-ish. When Katara is seen as a child in her flashbacks, her winter coat with the crescent moon closely resembles the winter coat she wore in the Northern Water Tribe while mastering waterbending with Master Paku. I wonder, because that was I guess it wouldn't have been that long ago, but were there still like relations with the Northern Water Tribe, or had the Fire Nation pretty much quashed that? Because they still could have been trading and stuff between the two, and that would make sense. She's wearing sort of a Northern Water Tribe coat. This is the only episode where Kaya's name is mentioned, and Hakoda is the only person to actually say her name out loud. So I guess we only get the reveal of Katara's mother's name in this episode, which is weird because you think that they would have peppered it through the show a little bit more, being Kaya. But I guess that kind of makes sense because we've only really talked about it through Katara and Sokka, and they were at an age where they probably wouldn't have really. I guess they would have known their mother's name, but it always would have been Mother. Which is pretty cool if that's the reason why they don't say her name, because it is through Katara and Sokka's perspective. In this episode, waterbending is seen performed as influenced by two primary opportune factors, that is the presence of a full moon and rain. In addition, waterbending is also seen under the influence of strong emotion, yet another factor that determines the potency of the art's use. So I guess that there was a full moon out during her bloodbending, which is weird because I feel like it hasn't been a month since the I don't even remember the bloodbender episode. So I don't know exactly how the time works out with that. But yeah, again, I really like the use of the emotion as a driving force behind bending, especially in the water bending, because usually water bending is more of a flowy, meditative sort of bending style. So it's really cool that anger also affects it. And the final piece of trivia is that Aang shows a lack of concern when Toph and Haru earthbend a tunnel into the Air Nomad painting, and never mention anything about the destruction of the atrium and fountain. This contrasts his thoughts about the destruction of the Air Temple in the Northern Air Temple. However, it should be noted that the Mechanist was making changes to the Air Temple for his own benefit, while Toph and Haru were trying to escape a Fire Nation attack. So, yeah, my thoughts on that are he's not really concerned so much with the Air Temple at this point, because he's more concerned with his friends that are trying to get him to safety. So I really think that makes sense. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the next episode. This episode of The Boy in the Iceberg is brought to you by Star Wars. Star Wars, the movie series, and I guess books and like TV and stuff. You guys all know what Star Wars is, right? Anyway, if you hadn't heard, they have a new movie coming out this December. Star Wars Episode 8, whatever the subtitle is. Go check it out. That is sometime in December. Okay, and let's get back into the episode. Welcome back. Okay, so I figure let's just get right into the next episode, guys. It's just you and me now. We can do whatever we want. Okay, so the next episode is the Ember Island Players. It's basically a clip show. I mean, for lack of a better term. I guess it starts off with the gang has gone back to Ember Island, and they're in the giant house that Zuko and his family used to stay in, like a summer home. And they mentioned this a couple times, like, isn't it weird that we're hiding from the Fire Lord in his own house? And we get Zuko saying, like, well, we haven't been here since we were like an actual family, which is pretty cool that I never really thought that they were actually happy. like even in the other Ember Island episodes where Zuko burns the picture of his family, it never really occurred to me that there was a time where they were actually a legit family, which is it's pretty cool to think about. But Aang and Zuko are training in fire and stuff like that, and then Sokka and Suki come in and say that they just saw that there's a play being performed by the Ember Island players about them. And they use on the poster, they use the horrible box art for the, I think it's like season 1 of like the actual real life season 1 box release. And it's always been like my least favorite artwork because it doesn't accurately represent the style of artwork used in the show. And I don't know if if that's a nod to that or whatever, but it always just made me mad. But they decide that Sokka even says that since it's the exact type of useless tomfoolery he's been missing whenever they're out on their missions, so they decide they're going to go see this play. And they show up and they don't know exactly what to expect. And I still don't know how they got all the information. But it goes through it basically from the beginning of the show with Katara and Sokka sort of just out in the water roaming around, and they run across Aang. And it's just very bad caricatures of all the characters. So Katara is like just this whiny. She's always like going into long motivational speeches about hope and how everyone needs hope, and she's always crying. And Sokka's always just making jokes about how he's hungry and how he needs meat. And then Aang is actually portrayed by a female in a bald cap, which he does not take too kindly to. And we get a lot of tension between Aang and Katara in this episode. One of the first points is where Zuko sits down next to Katara in the theater, and Aang wanted to sit by her, but he couldn't because Zuko's just like, "Why don't you just sit by me?" So he's already a little mad at this point. But they just go through all these all the scenes from the entire series really, and we just get to basically this episode is a clip show that's kind of pointing out flaws that some people had found in the series previous to that. One of them they talk about Jet, but that's a little later. So we keep cutting back to the actual gang watching this, and they're not enjoying themselves except for Toph, and I guess Suki to some point. Toph is really into it, and she just thinks that every portrayal is the most accurate representation of the gang in every form, and because she has not been on screen yet. But they really did kind of nail Zuko. He's just always talking about his honor, which I just think is very funny. And then Iroh is always just wanting to eat. So it's just these wild caricatures of all of them. But really what this episode turns to be about is Aang and Katara, and how everything that Aang sees on screen is just like, it's just making him think in his own mind that Katara wants nothing to do with him. And because there's a couple points where Katara's like, the on-stage Katara says like, "Aang, I love you like a brother," and then the fake avatar is like, "I wouldn't have it any other way." And he does not like this. He actually gets mad at Katara at one point because he's acting like she actually said the things that her on-stage persona was saying. And at one point, they actually go outside. I think it's during like an intermission, and Aang talks to Katara and says basically, "We kissed at the right before the battle, and I thought we were going to be together, but then we weren't." He's basically like, "So what's going on?" And Katara's like, "Well, I'm just confused. I don't really know what I want to do. We're in the middle of this giant war, and the world could end." And it's kind of sad because you really want them to end up together. Well, I do, I guess. And there's just all these obstacles that are getting in the way. And we also get some of the other characters talking to each other. So like Zuko at one point talks to Toph, and he's talking about Iroh and how he betrayed him, and he basically he just turned his back on him when Iroh was really the only person who ever really believed in him or really put faith in him. And Toph tells him that Iroh has already forgiven you. I talked to him, and he knows that there's good in you, and what you're doing right now, you've redeemed yourself, basically. And it's got some emotion in this episode, even though it's mostly just played for laughs, that the play is so bad. Because it doesn't accurately represent anything that went on. One of the times when they meet Boomy, it's just a whole bunch of people running around on stage that they're not really doing anything. But there is a lot of emotional weight to it. And even a couple times during the play, I guess when Sokka, there's a scene where Sokka and Yue are talking, and when Yue goes off to do her moon duties or whatever it says in the play, and Suki's like, I didn't know that you made out with the moon spirit, and Sokka's tearing up and stuff like that. But there's not, other than that, there's not a lot of substance to this episode, because it is mostly them just recounting their past days and stuff like that. But we do get, Toph shows up eventually, and she is played by this buff man, this giant man, who instead of hearing or seeing with his feet, he emits a sonic shriek, not on like a bat or something like that. And Toph is just over the moon with this. She's like, I wouldn't have cast it any other way. This giant man that's playing her. So it's a really fun episode. Harley, you got any thoughts about that? I wish it was Star Wars. We know you do. But the real kind of drive throughout this episode comes at the end, and it just sort of sets the tone for the next episode. I feel like it turns out that they've gone beyond just the events of the TV show, and have basically predicted the outcome of Aang fighting the Fire Lord. And it ends with Azula killing Zuko, and then it also ends with the Avatar dying by the hands of the Fire Lord, and the Fire Lord being triumphant, as they are in the Fire Nation. And so you got to imagine what it's like for Aang watching this, who he's still uncertain at this point about his abilities and about his effectiveness at fighting the Fire Lord. And then you go and see this basically a lighthearted play up until the end, where it basically says that you're not good enough and the Fire Lord is going to kill you. And it's basically already written down. And so it's got to mess with his head, and everyone leaves just kind of broken down, really. No one's having any fun anymore, even though they were making fun of the play the way through. So it really is a good setup for the next 4 episodes, where we will get to see Aang take on the Fire Nation. And so that's what I really liked about this episode. Not just like all the humor and stuff, but they do a very good job at setting up the events and just showing how bleak everyone must be feeling at this point. So that's really all I have about this episode. Not really a lot happens, unless you have anything to add, Harley. Not really anything except for something about Star Wars. I really feel like this bit has overstayed its welcome. As do I, Harley. As do I. So yeah, let's get into a little bit of trivia, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay, so first bit of trivia here, if I can find it. Scroll, please. Again, the stupid countdown to the comet. Take it off the trivia. If you read one, you know it all. Okay, so the idea of a young male hero being acted by a woman is similar to traditional English theater productions of Peter Pan, where the character is played by an actress. That's what I thought, because there's also like a point in the play where he says that the fake Aang says that he's a prankster, and I'm like, that's not really the character of Aang, but it did really have a Peter Panish feel. The black-clad stagehands can be equated to the stagehands in traditional Japanese kabuki theater. In the real world, the adoption of these stagehands costumes to signify the invisibility of ninjas in kabuki play is responsible for the pop cultural depiction of ninjas as wearing all black outfits. There's some pretty cool effects actually in the play where they, for a lot of the bending, they use like streamers or something like that, and like paper or like fabrics or some sort to actually like make you feel like there's fire and water being thrown around. So if there is, I guess kabuki theater that way. It's actually, it would be really cool to see a play like that in real life with all the effects and stuff. The storyline of adventurers watching a comically inaccurate play depicting their own adventures is very similar to parts of the 2004 book Days of Magic, Knights of War by Clive Barker. I have not read that book. Moving on. The image of the poster shows an exaggerated rendition of the Season 1 box set cover art. Okay, that's what I thought. Again, just absolutely terrible, whoever did that. Rotten hell, frankly. Even though the cabbage merchant's last appearance was in the Tales of Ba Sing Se, he is mentioned here as a surprisingly knowledgeable merchant of cabbage, one of the jokes that Sokka tells. The title of the play, The Boy in the Iceberg, is a reference to the podcast by Caleb Ader and not Harley Davis. Zuko's voice actor, Dante Bosco's older brother, Derek Bosco, provided Zuko's stage actor's voice. That's actually, yeah, it sounded pretty close to what Zuko actually sounds like. And Zuko's character in this was really not that far off from the real Zuko. Jenny Kwan, the voice of Suki, Sokka's girlfriend at the end of the 100-Year War, voice actress Yue, Sokka's previous romantic interest. So they're just like sharing voice actors and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of trivia here about that. Wow, there's so much trivia. We have time for this, but I don't want to do all of it. Here's one about Jet. So I forgot to mention this before, but they do make a reference to Jet when he was being mind controlled earlier, and so I think Zuko asked, "Did Jet die?" And Sokka says it's really unclear. So it's just like they're being purposely vague about whether Jet died or not, and still are today. Appa in the play resembles more of a Chinese southern lion in festivals. So just think Mulan when they're in like the dragon. There's like a whole bunch of people in the dragon. That's what that reminded me of, and it's really cool looking. It actually looks better than Appa did in the live action version, The Last Airbender. Wow, there's so much trivia. This is the most trivia I've ever seen. Throughout the episode, Aang is wearing the same kind of hat that Zhu wears in The Painted Lady to cover his tattoo. It kind of looks like a Pope hat. I don't know what those are called. Sorry for disrespecting the Catholic Church. The ending to The Boy in the Iceberg, in which the Fire Nation gains total victory in the war, seems odd considering the playwright is from the Earth Kingdom. So this might have been like a Fire Nation add-on that they changed the ending of the play to suit their needs. In the beginning of the play, the shots of the audience on the lower levels are shown, including both men and women. However, by the time a play is in actor Toph's introduction, the shots are of men only. So all the women already got up and left. The actress playing Yang uses the phrase "yip yip" before going into the Avatar state instead of using it to get Appa to fly. And the way that the actress flies around, she's like on wires and stuff, but she has this like really tiny glider that looks like Aang's glider that she like just holds on to, and then they take her off. Okay, so let's get one last piece of trivia. When the defeat of the Fire Nation at the Siege of the North Sea occurred, the Fire Nation audience cheered, which is odd. Yeah, I did think of that through the episode because it was weird because they still depicted that battle as a victory for the Avatar, and it was just like crushing Fire Nation ships and stuff. But with that, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to email us, you can find us at boysintheiceberg@gmail.com, and check us out on Twitter, which we're actually starting to do stuff with, at boysintheberg. Again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you here for the series finale of Avatar: The Last Airbender next week. It's going to be a
a huge extravaganza. We're going to be doing 4 episodes, so make sure you're back here for that. I guess, bye.